Inconsistent. There's hardly a word in the English language that can better describe Star Wars as a whole. Personally, I only rate 4 out of the 11 feature films as actually good movies. Whether or not you agree with my opinion is beside the point. What I think most every Star Wars fan can agree on is that there have been some duds. Too many, in fact, for a franchise this beloved, a franchise with all the resources in the world behind it. Star Wars has struggled to maintain a consistent quality for decades, so it's only appropriate, I guess, that the second season of The Bad Batch is a microcosm of that larger problem. But it also manages to rise above its own mediocrity at times and give me hope I haven't felt since I watched Andor, that at least some of the minds behind Star Wars truly care about just telling good stories. I came into The Bad Batch Season 2 fully intent on loving it. I am a huge fan of stories about brothers in arms fighting and surviving against all odds, relying on each other to pull through. My favorite show, film, miniseries, anything on a screen of all time is Band of Brothers. And so The Bad Batch kind of has an unfair advantage when it comes to getting me hooked. And this season really opened quite strong, with Clone Force 99 heading out on a mission with actual stakes.
You want to really be free?
Things go wrong in unpredictable ways, and they have to rely on their ingenuity, creativity, and even the help of a stranger, as well as, of course, each other, to escape with their lives. These first 2 episodes also set up themes such as Omega's struggle to figure out where she really belongs, whether she is a soldier or a child, and Echo's desire to do more than just survive in this new and changing galaxy. It's a solid opening mini-arc that establishes an overarching goal for the Bad Batch, it introduces potential future conflict, and it delivers some thoroughly enjoyable action scenes, such as Wrecker gleefully wielding the cannon from a defunct AAT. It was basically everything I could have reasonably expected from the show, and it only got better with Episode 3 as we saw Crosshair for the first time this season, and the show established the current workings of the Empire and began to show us how the clones fit into the Empire's schemes. Crosshair and Cody's mission to free the Imperial officer and put down the planet's insurgency was, again, just what I wanted. The action was hard-hitting and impactful, putting the skill and ingenuity of the clones on display. It's beautiful. It's wonderfully dynamic. There's a real sense of danger for the clone troopers. Is it a little over the top at times? Sure, but hey, it's better to exaggerate Crosshair's abilities than to make the action stale and static like some shows. The real meat of this episode, though, was after the action subsided and Cody talks down the insurgent leader and convinces her to surrender, only for the imp officer to order her immediate execution, which Crosshair carries out when Cody hesitates. After only one more line of dialogue,
"Put a body in the square."
The show then does what few Star Wars properties have done lately. It has the decency to let us watch and absorb the scene without someone narrating it to us. We witness the aftermath, the stormtroopers flooding the town, the distressed citizens, this smug look that the imp gives Cody, all without a single word being spoken. Dialogue is a good and necessary part of storytelling, don't get me wrong, but when you can convey ideas without having to have a character spout them out loud, it really shows your creativity as a writer, and it treats the audience like they're somewhat intelligent, and we like feeling like we're at least kind of smart. So let's look at these examples of show don't tell. For one, why did all these stormtroopers, though I guess they're not technically stormtroopers yet, show up just now when they could have easily helped the much smaller clone force retake the town? The answer is simple enough. Clones to the Empire are expendable. They are weapons at the end of their limited life to be used up and tossed aside. There's no point in wasting expensive troops that the Empire is paying to train and equip when they can throw some ready-made soldiers into the line of fire. The fact that clones are also combat veterans and thus better suited for a mission such as this also plays a part in that decision, I'm sure, but the fact that the Empire doesn't even send in their own troopers as backup until the mission is completed and the danger gone is quite telling. Then we have this shared look between Cody and Imp Face. This smug, arrogant expression of the officer is, well, brilliant. It conveys so much. Cody is used to being in charge, right? He's a commander. He only had a Jedi general whom he respected and trusted, and who respected and trusted him to answer to. He is accustomed to a flawed but good-willed republic, and he wasn't expecting to get put in a situation where he was torn between his sense of duty and his duty to what was right. These few seconds, this one glance, tells Cody how all that has changed, how he truly is now just a skilled and capable pawn in the hands of an uncaring, brutal chessmaster. I'm not generally very critical of the writing in The Bad Batch because, unlike some other Star Wars properties, it is explicitly made for kids, like it's rated for kids. So I'm generally not going to call out moments of unnecessary exposition and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean I don't appreciate well-executed show don't tell when it is present. These other kids shows should take note. We finished the episode by shifting focus from from Cody onto Crosshair, as Crosshair's principles are once again challenged. It was one thing for him to disagree with the rest of Clone Force 99 at the onset of Order 66, but for him to see Commander Cody, a clone who loyally served through that order and beyond, question his orders and then abandon his duty, well, that's gotta be a whole heap of new straw on the camel's back. This episode really just left me satisfied. It delivered in every area, and yet it left me wanting more, anxiously awaiting the next part of Crosshair's story. So imagine my disappointment when he wouldn't show up for the next 8 episodes. And when he did come back, what a banger of an episode that was, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Episodes 4, 5, and 6, yeah, they exist. Do I really need to say more? They're filler. The Bad Batch win a race after Tech takes over for the overly cocky droid pilot. They do some unsuccessful treasure hunting inside a giant robot, and then they help a Wookiee Padawan back to Kashyyyk and kick some Trandoshan butt. Okay, episode 6 was kind of fun, and it touched on a couple of interesting points about Order 66 and the detachment Jedi feel from their home world that they barely lived on, but none of that is really explored either in the episode or in future episodes. We do continue the theme introduced in the first episodes as Hunter begins to solidify the idea of giving Omega an actual home, a childhood, something the clones were all deprived of, and this episode did at least have heart. It was a side quest, yeah, but one that was somewhat emotionally impactful and that delivered some great Clone Wars-esque action. Plus, it's always fun to see Trandoshans get whooped. Republic Commando taught me an unnaturally strong hatred of those lizards. I will say I was severely disappointed there was no reference to Sev during this episode. Come on, we know he got captured on Kashyyyk. How hard would it have been to have one Trando get cut down by a blaster bolt as it was sneaking up on one of our heroes, and then have the camera cut to a shadowed figure with a distinct outline disappearing into the trees? I'm not asking for a full-fledged Sev storyline here, guys, but come on, you could have done me a solid. Anyhow, getting back to it, the show decides to actually get back to its own plot. With the Coruscant arc, the Bad Batch showed us it can do more than just action. It can actually do political intrigue. I love the behind-the-scenes look at how the Empire transitioned away from clones and created the Stormtrooper program. I appreciated the depiction of clones as soldiers who know nothing beyond their role as frontline troops, who are struggling to find their way, to find any meaning in a system that has no use for them, and yet fully controls their fate. I enjoyed the introduction of Senator Chuchi as a sympathetic, well-intentioned representative who stood up for what was right, even if it put her in over her head and in great danger. The addition of the Zealot clone, Brainwash clone, or whatever you call this assassin was intriguing, and I hope that's explored further. Honestly, the part of these episodes I remember least well is the role played by the Bad Batch themselves. I know they sneak onto Rampart's ship to grab the command logs, and that scene was pretty solid if standard Bad Batch action fare, but the episodes just had so much else going on that was more memorable. Speaking of command logs, I appreciated this bit.
I saved the backup to the central system.
Naturally, Admiral Rampart would not want his horrific actions recorded and leaked to the Senate, so he would have deleted the command logs. This is something that Slip anticipated and thus made a copy of the logs. It may seem like a minor plot point, but to me this displays that a significant amount of care went into crafting this story. The writers appear to have sat down and really thought about how Rampart would act. It makes him seem like a more fleshed out character, because it makes sense that he would know enough about the ship's systems to delete his command logs, but he's not an expert who works on the systems daily, so he wouldn't know to check if a copy had been made. He just assumed that his actions provided a sufficient cover-up, and he wouldn't suspect a clone of taking such insubordinate action. Little details, people. They show you how much care was put into this product, and I appreciated it here. Best of all from this arc, though, was the twist that I didn't even see coming. I mean, obviously we all know that the Stormtroopers exist, so they had to happen somehow, but I did not foresee Palpatine's twisting of the evidence, and I loved it. For all the issues I have with the prequels, Palpatine as this political mastermind, manipulating every event from behind the scenes, is a fantastic villain, or at least a fantastic idea for a villain. Getting to see that play out on a smaller scale, with him only needing one short monologue to display his cunning and forethought, that was awesome. It was the perfect apex for this arc. The next arc, however, I didn't care for it. I don't appreciate the fact that some random kid could just walk onto the Marauder and steal it. Seriously? There aren't safeguards against that sort of thing? I get it if the ship has been abandoned, but if you're actively using the ship for a mission, you'd think you'd have some sort of way to keep the local populace from just flying off with it. Actually, now that I think about it, Star Wars as a whole just kind of does this a lot. Ships can just be lifted from wherever. I guess they haven't invented keys yet. Anyhow, that's not my real issue with the arc. My main complaint is that, of course, it's largely just filler. The Bad Batch help rescue a bunch of uninterested kids who are enslaved by this comically ridiculous mindless bad guy stereotype. I mean, look at this scene. Absolute, unfiltered, unadulterated, unnecessary cringe. There's being a kid's show, and then there's just being childish. And this is childish, pointless fluff that no kid in the world needed to see to understand that this is the bad guy. It reeks of writing that is trying to appeal to kids, but has absolutely no idea how smart or dumb kids are. There is some character growth in this arc as Omega and Tech grapple over Echo's decision to leave with Rex in the previous episode, with Omega trying to come to terms with the facts of life as soldiers, and Tech not really being able to sympathize with her, because he's Tech. Their conversation just could have happened during a more interesting side plot, is all I'm saying. The subsequent episode is exactly the type of side story I do enjoy. There's an aura of mystery and suspense throughout the episode. An Imperial plot slowly but not fully unraveled by the Bad Batch. It leaves room for the viewer to wonder what exactly is going on, rather than just shoving the plot points and the motivations for all of the episode's characters into our faces in a simplistic manner. As a bonus, it actually connects to things we care about, that is, the Empire and the clones. The Zillo Beast's purpose is suggested, but the storyline is left open for further exploration, and I enjoy that. I appreciate the writers having the confidence to show us the setup, even when they won't really get to pay it off until the next season. They've demonstrated their ability to maintain themes across this season, so they've earned some trust. And boy, do they even earn more after the Outpost, when we are finally reunited with Crosshair. This episode, to put it simply, goes hard. We get the full disdain of the Imperials for the clones put on display in a way that is straightforward enough for the show's target audience, but done creatively enough to satisfy the adults. The lieutenant feels natural, like a newly hired consultant who walks into an office and immediately thinks he knows everything wrong with what all the senior employees are doing. And once again, we have Crosshair confronted by the brutal reality that he and his brothers are expendable. They're resources to be used up. They aren't soldiers, not anymore, not in the minds of their new empire. And what a setting for this realization of his. The bleak, harsh, unforgiving landscape matches the lack of care shown by the Empire. Neither the Mountain nor the Imperials care about the clones. They'll both happily leave them for the buzzards that appear regularly during this episode. This was the episode that made me tell my wife, okay, yeah, we need to watch The Bad Batch. It's worth watching again. Getting to see the final straw on the camel's back, breaking Crosshair's sense of duty and loyalty, showing us that even he can only follow orders so far. It's just so good. It's almost hilarious how aggressive the contrast is then between the Outpost and Pabu, the following episode in which Clone Force 99 arrives on a tropical island and makes some friends. I will give this episode props for following up on the theme of Omega needing to be a child rather than just a soldier. But personally, it just wasn't my cup of tea, especially not after watching Crosshair gun down his commanding officer. The pacing switch was just a bit too much. But hey, if you liked it, or your kids loved it, more power to you. The final 3 episodes, though, they're why I watched the show in a nutshell. The final arc pulls off a satisfying ending, yet obviously it left me wanting more, needing to see where the story goes next. So many themes from throughout the show come to a head in these episodes. We have Crosshair after his breaking point, struggling to figure out what to do or even who he is, eventually choosing defiance and warning his brother of the danger therein. We have Hunter, who appears finally settled on settling down, on giving Omega what he and all the other clones are deprived of, but all of that is ripped away when things go south. We have Omega choosing her brothers over her own safety, even though it comes at the cost of her freedom, of the dream that Hunter had for her. And of course, we have Tech, who earlier this season was counseling Omega on the need to be able to move on, sacrificing himself for the rest of the team. I didn't love everything about this arc. The scenes of Hemlock at the summit were largely just telling us things we already knew, and it boggles my mind that these 3 fighters couldn't shoot a stupid rail car off its track, but those complaints didn't come close to ruining the finale. Ultimately, The Bad Batch delivered because it knows what it's about: brothers and a sister. Even in the filler episodes, there are moments and conversations that reinforce how much these clones care for one another, how without each other, they're lost. This is beautifully emphasized by Crosshair's storyline, too short though it may have been, as he, once fully confident in his assertion, wavers and loses his conviction. The Bad Batch isn't afraid to tackle mature themes. I mean, the main theme of orders versus morality was the central point of argument at the Nuremberg trials, for crying out loud, and it presents them in a way that kids can grasp while still being largely appealing to adults as well. They walk a fine line with these dark themes sometimes, and perhaps that's why Filoni and team feel the need to interject the lighthearted filler. I didn't appreciate the constant jumps from story to filler, from serious mission to goofy heist, and I think you can blend the dark and light tones better, though I admit it's not easy. Like its animated predecessors, when The Bad Batch is good, it's good. The character arcs are clearly well thought out, the recurring themes have sensible payoffs, and of course the action delivers one banger after another. If you trim the fat, it's a tight, quick-paced story that gives us that Clone Wars feeling we've been missing. This show gives me hope because it shows so much of what we love about Star Wars, this vast galaxy with so much potential for telling stories of all kinds, which can easily succeed if only they are crafted with love and care, with respect for the characters and for the audience. Alright, those are all my thoughts on The Bad Batch Season 2. What did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you somewhere in between? Let me know, and thank you for watching.